still stand. Bring the water, bring the thunder and the storm. I don't care, I won't break my stride.
So, I've been playing with the Sony A1 for about 3 weeks, and if you're not going to watch the whole video and you want to know my thoughts, here it is.
He's running away! Come on, crackhead!
This thing is absolutely wild, and it's got to be on crack. And if it's not, the designers definitely were when they were making it. If you're still with us past that initial synopsis, let's go a little bit further. Before we hit what makes this camera so special, let's brush up a little bit on my situation and why I'm interested in this camera. I'm a filmmaker photographer. It is my main source of income, and I'm on the tools more often than I'm not. Currently for my video work, I shoot with the Sony A7S III, and for my photos, I use the A7R4. Now this is an awesome setup, there is no arguments there, but I'm a filmmaker first and a photographer second, and that's why I'm looking for a little bit more. Most brands that hire me to shoot video also get me to shoot photos, but the brands that hire me to shoot photos don't necessarily get me to shoot video as well. So as you can see, my business is very much filmmaking first. While I do prefer to work in teams, lots of my work is run and gun. It's the gunslinger 2-camera action, running, jumping, moving really quickly, and getting on and off gimbals very, very quickly. Ultimately, I want to have my A7S III as a permanent mini cine rig, if you will. Matte box, V-mounts, rails, monitors, handles, all that sort of stuff. And I want my B cam, my on the sticks, and my gimbal cam to also be my photography camera. Now sure, you might be saying, why can't you do this in your current setup? And the answer is I can. But for all the great photography specs the A7R4 has, it does leave a bit to be desired on the video side of things. If you have any other alpha full frame camera other than the A1 or the S3, its video features are pretty much on par with the A7R4. It's great, but once you have the S3, it's really hard to go back.
I'm not going back to jail.
But for me, the video quality is such a high priority in my cameras, I want my A and my B cam to be matching for resolutions, frame rates, codecs, color science, color matching, all that sort of stuff. Ultimately, I want my B cam to act like an A cam when it's on the gimbal or when it's on the sticks. And right now, I can't do that with the R4 because if I want slow motion, I lose 4K. If I want to move fast, I say hello to rolling shutter. And if I want to put a heavy color grade through it, well, I've only got 8-bit. So in my perfect world, I'm looking for a camera that does the video of the A7S III and the photo of the A7R4. This is where we enter the $10,000 solution to my problems, the Sony Alpha 1. So what makes the A1 the alpha of all alpha cameras? Before its announcement, we had 3 distinct prosumer lines within Sony. We had the A7R series for high resolution photography. We had the A7S series for incredible low light performance and stunning video quality. And we also had the A9 series for high-speed sport and wildlife photography. Like I said, the A1 designers, they were on crack.
Why? Can't you hear that?
Because they managed to get the speed of the A9 and the photography of the A7R series with the video quality of the A7S plus 8K. That is wild. And that's all thanks to the new 50 megapixel stacked sensor and some processing wizardry, no doubt. So why am I interested in this camera? For 2 main reasons. One, it's super cool tech. But ultimately, I'm looking to buy this camera for myself. And I'm very lucky that Pete from Sony Adelaide has lent me this camera to really ultimately work out if this is the camera for me. This review is not going to be me reading a spec sheet to you. It's not going to be me telling you the facts of Sony's website, or you can go find that on other YouTubers. I wanted to tell you what I experienced with this camera, real world situations. I want to hit the points that make this camera uniquely different to the other Sony Alpha lineup. Things that ultimately are going to help me in my decision if I should buy this camera myself. First and foremost, I want to go over things like video, including 8K, the photo quality, the low light ISO performance, and the big one for me, the usability and the practicality of this camera. As far as video is concerned, you don't need to be concerned because this camera is a mammoth.
I like it, but how?
That doesn't mean it's big and slow.
You sneaky minx.
While it doesn't quite have the cine features that some people might hope for, like DCI, 4K and True 24, etc., this is not a cinema camera. It's a bloody good hybrid camera. It matches the A7S III in video quality and drops a very serviceable 8K for good measure. I thought I'd push my M1 Mac Mini to the absolute limits, and I'm filming this whole talking head segment in 8K, so here's future Jed to tell you just how that went down. All for science.
Yes, science!
The M1 Mac Mini did pretty well. It's a $2,000 Australian computer and it could have edited the whole thing in 8K. I did, however, move across to a proxy workflow because this video has taken ages to edit and I wanted to do anything to just speed that whole thing up. But hey, it did a hell of a lot more than I expected it to. So far, my experiences in recording 8K have gone absolutely swimmingly. I was recording in room temperature for 3 hours, and I got bored. I gave up the test because I figured no one's recording 3 hours of straight 8K footage. I got 0 overheat warnings. It was hot to touch the camera, don't get me wrong, but there was no overheating warnings at all. So if you've got the hard drive storage and the computing power, film away in 8K until your heart's content. The rest of the video features film just as smoothly as the Sony A7S III, and in the right situations, it can actually be better. Gerald Undone did a really good video in when you put the camera into 8K mode and record externally to a Ninja, you can actually get a cleaner 4K image. I'll link that video down here or up here if I can. And if not, it will be in the description below. You'll get all of the 10-bit 422 action that you're used to on the S3 inside of the A1, including some really good dynamic range. As with the Sony A7S III, if you do want to record in the highest codecs, the highest bit rates, etc., you will need to have lots of fast storage, fast cards, fast hard drives, etc., and the computing power to match. I did notice when shooting S-Log3 at higher ISOs that the autofocus was about 80% of its usual self. I don't know if I found just unique circumstances, but I felt like it was important I needed to share that with you. Weirdly enough, 80% of its usual self is still pretty damn good and better than most cameras out on the market. I was genuinely blown away by the image quality I was able to pull out of the 50 megapixel Sony A1. I think 50 megapixels might be that sweet spot between high resolution, printability, croppability, low light performance, but also the big one for me, file size. To have image quality that matches the A7R4 at speeds that match the A9 II and in some cases actually exceed it is pretty special, and just to pull that trigger and hear it go, it's a pretty good feeling. Now beware, if you do this, you're writing a lot of data to your cards. If you're buying a camera like the Sony A7S III or the A1, there is 0 point in buying these cameras if you're not going to be running the CF Express Type A cards. Don't even think about buying these cameras if you intend on using SD cards. Unfortunately, if you choose to use SD cards, you don't get to access the whole camera. And at the end of the day, if we're spending this much money on a unit to do a job for us, we need to have the right tools. It'd be like buying a McLaren and putting stock tires on there or not putting the right fuel in there. You're just not going to get the most out of the car. But thankfully, if the rumors are to be believed, there are a couple brands who are about to start releasing CF Express Type A cards, and this will hopefully, for the consumers, drive the price down. Saving money is always a good time when you're spending this much money. The Lowlight Performance on the A1 genuinely shocked me. Traditionally, when you have a higher resolution camera, the pixels are smaller and therefore they don't take quite as much light in, which means you get a more grainy image. But the A1 seems to write its own rules. The next portion of this video will be dedicated to a few different ISO tests. If you're not into that, head to this timestamp. And while you're down there, make sure you go and hit subscribe and ding that bell. But the results are shocking and you should probably stick around. Traditionally, high resolution cameras aren't that great in low light, as you can see right here with the A7R4. Looking at the S3 and the A1, it's actually shocking how well the A1 is doing. I'd actually say that the A1 is cleaner for the most part until the S3 gets to 12,800 and it cleans right up. I think it'd be unfair to not show the S3 excelling just because the other cameras can't go past a certain point. So here we go. Recently, I downloaded the best denoiser I've ever used. Look at what it can do to the Sony A7S III footage at higher ISOs. If you want a video on that plugin, let me know down below in the comments. So the ISO test brought about some surprising results, to say the least. And I thought it would be rude to not test the 8K noise to see if 4K SI versus 8K noise was any different. To my surprise, I found that 8K was a little bit noisier. Alright, welcome back all you guys who might have skipped ahead, and if no one did, thanks. Make sure you guys are subscribed as well. So a camera that shoots 30 frames a second RAW must have some pretty good autofocus, right? Yeah! There's really not too much to say about it, it just works. Here you can see an example of the focusing just doing its job while we're taking some images. That's what the flashing grey rectangle around the frame is. That's every time the electronic shutter is taking an image. The camera is doing 120 calculations a second. If you're shooting at 30 frames a second, that's 4 calculations between frames. That's pretty impressive. This sequence is MJ, 47 frames, bang on, dead in focus. Each one is as sharp as the last. Alright, I want to reiterate, these are photos stitched together to make a video at 30 frames a second. These are not videos. They are photos. The reason it wasn't 48 and onwards is because I was manually controlling the focus point and I moved it and I made the error. 47 tack sharp shots out of 47. That's impressive. Once again, these are photos, not videos. I took the A1 to my footy game last week. Here's a couple of shots of the game after mine. Photos, not videos. Fun fact, I shot 160 gig in about 20 minutes. So the autofocus is just bloody good. It just works. It works like a pro camera should. And that leads me to my next and my final point, usability. Ergonomically, this camera is a Sony A9 Mark II for the most part. I do intend to use this camera full time with a battery grip, but it's not uncomfortable as is. One thing I'd love to see on a second iteration or any other alpha camera in that matter, I'd love to see a photo to video toggle, like we've seen on Canon cameras in days gone by. It just means I can have all my custom sets for video and all my custom sets for photo. Bang, I'm into the other mode, especially when these cameras have been marketed so heavily as hybrid shooters. Speed is everything, as you can tell.
That's what she said. No time, but she did. No time!
A reason I'd like a little bit more contrast between the photo and the video side of things, if I'm shooting as a hybrid shooter, I'm shooting some video, I'm shooting S-Log or S-Cinetone, and I want to quickly flip over and take a photo, and I shoot that raw, but I've left it in S-Log. It means that it's actually shot that image in S-Log, while it is still going to be a raw image. What actually happens when you put that into Lightroom or you're flicking through your photos, it looks like it's been shot in S-Log. When you click on that in Lightroom, it actually does convert it back to raw, but it's just one of those things that if it was a photo mode, it just wouldn't have that issue. Speaking of RAW, the A1 has 3 types of RAW available to us. The standard uncompressed RAW that we all know and love, the compressed RAW that some people use, and shouldn't. And now we have the new lossless compressed RAW. The lossless compressed RAW meets us halfway in file size between compressed and uncompressed. I had a real peep at these images and gee, you can tell the difference between compressed and uncompressed, but uncompressed and lossless compressed, I think it might actually be lossless. And I would personally consider shooting lossless compressed to save 25 megabytes per image. You might think that 25 megabytes doesn't sound like a lot, but if you shoot 10,000 photos, that's 250 gigabytes you've saved.
Guess what? You did the math.
And realistically, a camera that shoots this fast, 10,000 images is not that much. The A1 of course has a new menu system that we're used to seeing coming out on all the new Sony cameras. It's got the folding out screen, not the flip around screen. I actually really prefer that for video, and the touch functionality finally works like a true touchscreen. The A1 has the best EVF getting around on the market. It's the same one as the A7S III. Things look so good, they even look better than real life. It has 0 blackout. You can't do that on a DSLR. If you're a tech dinosaur that gets a hard on for saying that mirrorless isn't quite there yet, DSLR is the greatest.
It's hards on.
You've been wrong for a while. But what do you have to say about this one?
Shit! Alright!
One thing I love about high resolution cameras is the ability to in-camera crop down to APS-C or Super 35 mode. This really gives me an extra 1.5 times crop, and essentially gets me another lens when I'm out and about. Turns my 24 into a 35, and my 35 into a 50. I love doing this because it really helps me out when I'm in a pinch or I don't have that lens on me, or I just want to go out and shoot friends and family for the day and I just want to take one lens with me. While this obviously does drop down the resolution, we're still shooting at incredibly high quality when we're doing this on the A1. Now traditionally when we do this on a Sony camera, if I've got 30 shots waiting in the buffer, I can't change that, I can't enter menus because the camera's still processing that. Now thanks to some processing wizardry inside this camera, you can actually enter your menus, you can go in and out of Super 35 crop while you've still got photos in the buffer. That is a game change, and it's the small things like that that you don't realize save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle. You don't have to pretend you're changing settings when you're waiting for a client. You're just waiting for 30 photos to write to the buffer. Speaking of buffers, if you've got CF Express, you're just never going to need to worry about that. You can have 600 photos in a buffer and they're written in a couple of seconds it feels like. At the end of the day, these are the small things that make this camera a true joy to use. What it says it can do, it does, and it just works. And every pro I've ever met, they want their gear to work, not to fail them, and to do what it says it can do. That's exactly how I feel about this camera. It won't let me down, it'll perform to extremely high standard and just get the job done. It's a true pro's pro. We're at this stage of technology, guys, that if you take a camera like this out and you take a bad photo, it's on you. Take it from me, don't listen to the other YouTubers. Gear absolutely matters. But good gear can't make a bad photographer any better than they already are. Basically, you can't polish your turd with a Sony A1. But if you know how to use it, you get the best results possible. I suppose we're at the tail end of this video where I do a bit of a deep dive into my thoughts and what I'm thinking. Let's forget about that. I'm buying this camera. I need to get into the house and buy a few bits of furniture and stuff like that. So it's only a matter of time. I am buying a Sony A1 though. For me, in the space that I work in the photo video game, I look at cameras and lenses as tools. Is this tool going to get me better at my job? Is it going to help me to do things? Is it going to be able to shoot photo and video? Can I leave one camera at home if need be? This is going to be the best tool for my job going forward. Therefore, it is worth me to invest the time and money into this unit. And when the A1 II comes out, or the A2, I'll get that one too. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate you spending the time to hang out and watch this review. If you do have any more questions, make sure you let me know down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer those for you. Also, while you're down there, give it a big fat thumbs up and subscribe. If you're not subscribed already, I've got 90% of my viewers don't subscribe to this channel. It'd be really cool to have you along for the journey. I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you like music suggestions, my one today, While She Sleeps, Sleep Society. It's a really cool album. I really enjoy it. So if you like that, enjoy. My name's Jed. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And I'm done with this video. I'm very excited to be done with it because this took way longer than you know. This whole build out of this set, getting lighting and moving everything around, 2 hours. 2 hours. And I know just how long this is going to take to edit because I filmed the whole thing in 8K. I'm an idiot. See you guys. Bye.
Care, I won't break my stride.
For my work I do here in Adelaide, I've moved away from just under my name and I've gone to End Media House. This is my logo and this is one of my logos as well. Let me know. Go follow it on Instagram, whatever, I don't care. But if you made it this far to the end of the video, give us a little skull emoji in the comments. Peace.